Liang Wenfeng, the founder of DeepSeek, has finally broken his silence. A very rare recorded conversation with investors has been made public. The content of this conversation carries an enormous amount of information. After reading it, I felt it was steeped in a Taoist T-style AI philosophy. And it is precisely this philosophical height that explains why the United States is so afraid of China's open source large models. Let me first give you a brief summary of the conversation. The dialogue lasted 4 hours, totaling 34,000 Chinese characters and 118 questions and answers. Several participating investment institutions have verified the content and confirmed its authenticity. I spent a long time reading it carefully, and I agreed with many of the viewpoints, points I have also repeatedly made in my previous videos. That is why I am so optimistic about DeepSeek, because I identify with its way. And its way is different from that of any other AI lab in my view. The most important AI large model lab in the world right now is DeepSeek. This conversation fully proves that. Let me first walk you through what he actually said, then we'll look at what the United States is doing, and why. At this very moment, they are proposing a complete ban on Chinese open source large models. The entire dialogue really revolves around two things, vision and restraint. First of all, the most important thing for a company is its vision. Managing a big company does not depend on rules and regulations. It depends on vision. What is vision? Vision is not a slogan on the wall. Vision is how I act, not what you say. It is how you actually operate. I think this point is extremely important. Please don't misunderstand this vision. It is not about painting a big pie. What does painting a big pie mean? It means making promises that in the future I will give you great returns. No matter how large or round that pie is, in essence, the driving force it gives you is still material interest. The consequence is that people gather for profit and eventually disperse when the profit runs out. And what kind of people can you attract through material interest? To put it bluntly, in the eyes of the ancients, these are petty men. When a group of petty men gathers, what are they best at? Scheming against each other and fighting over benefits. If one day someone else can offer them even more, they will abandon you immediately. Can such a team achieve anything significant? When superiors and inferiors compete for profit, the state is in danger. If every class, every family, every individual in a country thinks only of maximizing their own interests, that country is doomed. The same principle applies to a company. Why do big companies so often deteriorate? Because there are too many petty men inside. Think about it. Isn't that true? What truly brings a group of noble-minded people together is always a vision. The gentleman understands what is right. The petty man understands what is profitable. Vision is righteousness. What is DeepSeek's righteousness? Liang Wenfeng said very clearly in the exchange. We are doing this with a great deal of goodwill toward the world. We believe this is useful for humanity. It is something beyond money. Notice that phrase beyond money, which already distinguishes righteousness from profit. He also said, our original intention was not to maximize commercial interests. We are a group of very ordinary people. When we started this company 2 years ago, we didn't have much money. We didn't have many GPUs. We had no reputation, no appeal. But it is precisely such ordinary people who have achieved what the whole world thought impossible. Why? Because when noble-minded people come together, they do not need profit to drive them. You don't need to paint big pies. You don't need to promise options. You don't need to enforce a last-to-place elimination system. Vision itself is the greatest cohesive force. Now let's look at Yang Zhilin, the CEO of the recently popular Moonshot AI, and how he thinks about company management. Let me be clear, I am not trying to put one down to lift the other. I simply want to show where Liang Wenfeng differs from him. I watched an interview in which Yang talked about how he manages his team. He said, managing a team is like training a large model. That is a very science-oriented, logic-heavy way of thinking, but it is the kind of thinking a general would engage in. Think about it, did Liu Bang ever worry about how to prevent employees from exploiting loopholes? Did Cao Cao ever think about such issues? Liu Bang rose up against the Qin dynasty, aiming to overthrow tyranny and build a new world where ordinary people could survive. That is why he gathered everyone from the dog butcher Fan Kuai to the old aristocrat, Zhang Liang. What was on his mind? A great wind arises, clouds fly high. When I return to my homeland with power, I need brave men to guard all four corners. how to attract talent and realize a shared vision. That was what Liu Ban was thinking about. And Cao Cao, when he started his campaign, his goal was to defeat the warlords, unify the empire, break down class barriers, and reshape a new world order. He wanted to lead his people to create a new world. So he thought, the blue collar, the longing heart for you, my lord. I ponder deep. The mountain never tires of height, the sea never tires of depth. If Zhou could feed his people, the whole realm would turn to him. That poem, short song style, reveals what was on his mind still, how to unite talents from across the land and realize a common vision, do you see? This is the highest level of management. They do not worry about how to prevent employees from cutting corners, because the people they attract through righteousness are gentlemen. These people are not here to work for you. They are here to work for themselves. They come to fulfill their own vision. Once you understand this vision, you can understand why DeepSeek has always been so low-key and restrained. Because restraint itself is a strategy. The strategy to achieve the vision. In Lang Wenfeng's own words, give up some things in exchange for other, greater things. Sesame seeds are everywhere ahead, but the watermelon is still farther away. The more restrained you are, the more likely you are to succeed. This restraint is mainly reflected in the following aspects. First, stay on the main track. Do not let the noise along the road distract you from the main line. DeepSeek has only one main track, the model capability itself on the path to AGI. All those other very hot AI projects, like 3D generation, video generation, world models, etc., are completely outside their scope. Liang Wenfeng said, when video generation first came out, it was very popular, as if you had to do it, or else you wouldn't be considered an AI company. That struck me as strange if you think about it carefully. It has nothing to do with the roadmap to intelligence. Let me briefly explain why video generation has nothing to do with intelligence. Whether it is Cydance or Sora, they essentially learn the statistical distribution of pixel sequences. Compared with large language models, they lack an understanding of causality. For example, using a video model to generate a bouncing ball may look realistic, but it does not understand gravity, conservation of momentum, collision detection, etc. It merely imitates the visual patterns of bouncing balls from the training data. That is why these models produce physically impossible motion trajectories. They grasp correlations, not causal relationships. On the core roadmap to AGI, the first step is chain-day of thought reasoning. You need to enable the model to reason in order to build an understanding of the world. Video generation is just an application output of AI. It is not the entrance to AGI, even though video generation is extremely profitable. According to multiple media reports, Cydance alone has monthly revenue exceeding 1 billion yuan, and top short-free video companies receive single top-ups of 50 million yuan. DeepSeek has never considered doing video generation. That is the first restraint, staying on the main track. Second, restrain yourself from chasing traffic. For example, user-side traffic. In Liang Wenfeng's words, last Spring Festival, we suddenly got a lot of users, but we never tried to retain them or monetize them. We never thought about making a super app or becoming the next ByteDance or Tencent. We simply don't compete for that because there is a watermelon further ahead. What's in front might all be sesame seeds. I remember early this year, many people looked at DeepSeek's website traffic charts and said, oh, DeepSeek is no longer being used. DeepSeek is dead, and so on. In fact, they never intended to retain C-end users. As I have said before, C-end users are just sesame seeds. Once you have a huge user base, you will be led by the nose and waste your limited resources. Third, insist on open source and do not pursue excessive profits. Let us look at Liang Wenfeng's attitude toward open source. He said, I see no inevitable benefit in closing the source known at all. He also admits that open source does cede some advantages. But his logic is this. The AI industry may eventually account for 10% of human society's GDP. If you say you want to monopolize that benefit, you will definitely be abandoned by history. That is an objective law, a historical perspective. Then he said something that impressed me the most. Those who take more will be defeated by those who take less. You don't even have to actually take more. If your vision is taking more, you will lose to someone whose vision is taking less. None of them have actually gotten the money yet. It's just a vision. If your vision is to take more, you have already lost. That is how the world works. This is what I was saying earlier. Merely painting a big pie without knowing restraint will not lead to success. Think about it. Why did Chen Sheng and Wu Guang fail? Why did the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom fail? In my personal view, one very important reason is that they could not resist short-term temptations before realizing their vision. They cashed in early and ultimately undermined their own vision. Chen Sheng and Wu Guang, after their uprising at Day's village, rushed to declare themselves kings after taking Chen County, establishing the Zhengchu regime, and internal suspicion and killing began immediately. The Taiping Heavenly Kingdom was the same. After capturing Nanjing, they were eager to play emperor and began infiltrating nobles. The result was the same: internal collapse. If you cannot resist temptation and start extracting benefits before realizing your vision will become an empty slogan. Remember, once a team begins to enjoy the fruits and distribute benefits, that is the beginning of internal suspicion. Why does he get more and I get less? Why is he promoted while I stay still? All those messy issues come flooding in. So restraint is the strategy to achieve the vision. Many people do not understand this. I have read many articles, both foreign and domestic, analyzing why China's large models should be open source. How do they make money? These analysts say things like, open source is the strategy of the laggard, using low prices or even free access to attack competitors. It is the only weapon Chinese labs have against American rivals. Once they surpass them, they will close the source and collect all the profits. Let me tell you, this is a classic case of measuring a gentleman's heart with a petty man's measure. They never understand open source is not a tactic, it is a strategy. It is not meant to defeat competitors, it is meant to realize the vision of making the world a better place. Liang Wenfeng never worries about others deploying his open source models to compete with him, because for them, it simply means taking a little less. This restraint is also the best team adhesive. He revealed an interesting detail: DeepSeek once priced one of its models higher because they were afraid of excessive demand. Later, when they lowered the price, everyone was delighted, because that is the reason we work hard to make the model good, so that everyone can fully use it. See, this is a team built by a group of noble-minded people. As long as the stability of this team is maintained, they can realize the AGI vision. I don't know if you still remember in my video about DeepSeek V4. I specifically compared the team rosters in the V4 and V4 technical reports. The number grew from 197to nearly 300. Liang Wenfeng's name was listed together with everyone else, with no special treatment. Most of the old members from the V4 period were still there. To be honest, I had been worried over the past year because both abroad and in China there was a crazy wave of AI talent poaching. Some even offered annual salaries of hundreds of millions. Yet, under such immense temptation, DeepSeek's team remained stable, which shows what kind of people they are. Meta spent hundreds of millions to poach talent last year. So what, their AI large models have now faded into obscurity, and they are already planning to rent out computing resources. Friends, those who covet money have no ideals in their hearts. Now that DeepSeek has completed its first round of financing, it has largely resolved many underlying worries. From now on, team members no longer have to face pressure from those around them. They have enough for a lifetime and can focus on what they truly want to do. Besides that, he also mentioned the gap between China and the United States, which is consistent with my earlier judgment. China does not lack talent. It lacks computing power. Less computing power means fewer experiments. This is a hard constraint. So for now, it is impossible to surpass the United States. On a large scale, you simply cannot train models of that size, so you can only concentrate efforts on certain areas, such as coding capabilities. But the computing Guan power problem is short-term and will be resolved within a few years. So I am not worried about it. There are other parts of the dialogue that I think might involve trade secrets, so I won't share them here. So what I have outlined above is what I believe to be DeepSeek's way. They are not chasing monopoly profits, they are chasing their vision. And they don't just talk about it, they actually do it. They don't chase short-term fads. They don't scramble for traffic, they don't hype themselves. You won't see DeepSeek embedded ads during the Spring Festival Gala. That would be a waste of resources. They put all their resources into a single long-term goal. At this point, I believe many of you can already see why the United States is now so afraid of China's open source models and wants to ban Chinese AI entirely. Because this is the way, this is not about national security, nor about cybersecurity risks. Are closed-die source models safe? Closed-die source models safe. Closed-die source models are equally vulnerable to breaches and misuse. Just a few days ago, TEDGPC's model was breached and used to attack the Hugging Face website. How did they respond? They used China's OpenAI source model, GLM5.2, to analyze all logs, help fix bugs, and defend against the attack, while keeping all sensitive data, such as account passwords and key credentials, locally. That is the benefit of OpenAI source models. Today, more than 200 American street startups and some well-known large companies have jointly signed an open letter urging the US government not to ban Chinese open source models. This is exactly he who has the way wins many helpers. He who loses the way finds few. I still hold to my previous view. Artificial intelligence will not replace humans. It will reshape the job market, but it will not cause mass unemployment. AI is an amplifier of human capital. As long as we insist on making AI beneficial to everyone, the total labor output of human society will multiply, and the world will become richer than ever before. At that time, people may rethink the meaning of employment itself. What is it really for outright?